We absolutely love wasting time, just not on people like you. This club isn't your scene, so do us a favor and go somewhere else.
Rain, neon, and a heartbeat bass. A woman walks up to the hottest door in town and gets one word at the rope: deny. What starts as a simple club party, deny, turns into a tense night where every glance, every whisper, and every locked door hides something bigger. She doesn't argue. She makes a move. And that's when the mystery begins. Stay till the last minute. A woman is stopped at the door with a club party deny, and her next choice flips the whole night into an eerie puzzle you won't see coming. If you enjoy suspense stories like this, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you never miss a new mystery. Question: for where do you watch this video? Comment your city name below. Rain made the sidewalk shine like black glass. It ran in thin rivers along the curb, caught the colors of a neon sign that pulsed over a club door like a heartbeat. Men in dark coats huddled under the awning, checking names on a phone screen, moving the velvet rope an inch at a time. Bass crawled through the walls and thumped in the chest of anyone who stood near the bricks. The city had many doors. This one liked to pretend it was the center of the night. She walked up alone, her coat still wet at the shoulders, hair pinned back to keep it out of her face. She wasn't dressed like the others in line. No glitter, no me, no designer kluchi. Only a black dress that didn't show off much and a small leather bag with a zipper that didn't shine. She had no one on her arm. She watched the street's reflection in the puddle at her feet as the bouncer glanced at her and then past her, already shaking his head. Guest list, he said, not looking at her again. I'm meeting someone, she said. Not how it works. He moved the rope for a couple who smelled like expensive perfume and cold wine. She waited. A group of men in press shirts joked near her shoulder, the sound sharp and loud, the kind that didn't care who heard. The music inside rose and fell, and the bass pressed at the door like an animal. She checked her phone. 1 minute past the time she had promised herself she would stay calm. The manager came out. He had a polished smile he wore like a name tag. He was thin and clean and had a habit of talking fast. He took one look at her and slid his hands into his coat pockets like her existence was a small problem that he enjoyed solving. We're at capacity, he said. Members' night. Our members like a certain crowd. Her eyes went from his face to the sign over the door, then to the line, then to the rain sliding off the awning. I was invited, she said. Who by? He asked quickly. Name. She said a name he would know. He pretended he didn't. His smile tightened. He looked her up and down, a quick scan that was more insult than glance. Dress code, he said. It's also, look, try the place around the corner. Different vibe. You like it? She listened. He was careful in his words, but the meaning wasn't hidden. She had seen that look when she was younger and broke and standing at other doors. That look told you the door wasn't for you. It told you not to argue because they would find a reason, any reason, to make it your fault. She had made a choice, a long time ago, not to explain herself to anyone like him again. You came here on a night like this for 2 reasons. Either you wanted to feel something, or you were following the feeling of something you had lost. She stood there for a breath and watched a single droplet gather on the edge of the awning before it fell and broke on the toe of her shoe. I'll be inside in 5 minutes, she said. The manager's smile twitched. The bouncer suppressed a laugh. Sure, the bouncer said. And I'll be president. Step aside, please, she said. Not to them, but to the rain and to the wall that had guarded this place. She looked to the curb. Her car idled with its lights off. A second car slid in behind it, dark windows, engine running in a smooth, low hum. The manager noticed it, and his eyes flicked to the plates without meaning to. A third figure came along on foot with a leather portfolio under her coat, a woman with her hair in a tight bun and rain on her glasses, breath fogging in the cold night air. The bouncer straightened. We're good here, he said, but his voice had moved half an inch toward unsure. The woman with the portfolio walked up to her and nodded. Ms. Malik? Yes, she said. Are you comfortable signing here? The woman asked. They're ready. The manager's smile was gone. What is this? He asked, trying to laugh again and failing. The door opened behind him and a man stepped out. He was older, heavy coat, jaw tight. The owner. She knew his face from photos. He didn't look pleased, but he looked like a man who had decided something in a hurry and was committed to the story he would later tell himself about why it had been the right choice. "Ms. Malik," he said, "I'm Kellenworth." "Thank you for coming," she said. They stood under the thin shelter, and the woman, with the portfolio, flipped open to the last page, the place where all the lines ended. The street noise went on. A taxi honked 2 blocks away. Somewhere a bottle broke. The owner signed, then she signed, the pen heavy and expensive in her hand, the ink dark and steady. The manager tried to speak. You can't just." "Wire received," the woman with the portfolio said. "We'll file the assignments in the morning. Control transfers now. Congratulations." The bouncer set his feet like he was deciding whether he was paid enough for whatever was happening. People in line watched with interest like they had stumbled into a scene in a movie. None of them knew that this had been set in motion months ago, that the parent company that held the lease was drowning in short-term debt, that their tax filings had been flagged, that a note from a lender had been quietly bought 2 weeks ago by an investment company with a bland name that was in fact a front she had created. None of them knew that she had made 3 calls today, that she had told no one in her life except one person she trusted, that she had lain awake for 2 nights, listening to the sound a refrigerator made in the dark and the way that sound seemed to count. None of them knew the face she saw when she closed her eyes. Lila's face. The manager's voice was up in a higher register now. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You don't even know what you're doing. This isn't some little startup you can buy on an app. You think you can walk in here?" The owner cut him off. "Colin, she just did," he said. "She's your boss." "Not for long," Colin said. "I don't work for her." "You're on leave," she said, her voice calm. "Effective now. We'll be reviewing tonight's operations. Please hand over your work phone and your keys." "My phone is mine. The one the company provided," she said. "We'll mail your personal effects. I also suggest you call your uncle about the loan you arranged using company equipment and a list of client emails. Or I can call him for you." Colin's eyes flashed like someone had wiped a mirror. He handed over a set of keys with a sharp movement and ducked back inside. The bouncer looked at her, then at the owner, then at the line. "Open the rope," the owner said to him. "Let her in." The bouncer took a breath and moved the rope aside. "Go ahead," he said, not meeting her eyes. She walked into a wash of warm air that smelled like citrus cleaner and perfume and spilled vodka. Light moved over the ceiling in slow waves. The room was full of people trying to be louder than the music, and the music trying to be louder than their need to be seen. She paused just inside, and the scene split for her like oil separating in water. There was the show, and there was the space behind the show. She could see where the servers moved like fish through the currents, where the cameras hid in the corners, where the bartender didn't look because it was easier not to know the back half of the room. A dark-eyed woman at the host stand lifted her chin at her. "Reservation?" she asked out of habit. "Security office," she said. "Now." The woman hesitated, glanced toward where Colin had vanished. The owner followed them in and said, "Do as she says." They took a narrow hall that smelled like wet coats and ice. 2 doors at the end, one to the kitchen, one unmarked. The host took out a key card and held it against the unmarked door. The lock clicked. She went in first. The room hummed with fans and screens and bad lighting. A man in a headset watched a wall of feeds. His posture was slumped like a person who had trained himself to care only about what his screen told him to care about. He looked up. "We're not supposed to," he began. "You're going to export tonight's footage," she said. "All cameras. In the last 2 months. Save it to this." She pulled a small drive from her bag and set it on the desk. The man looked at the owner. The owner nodded. The man's hands started moving. She leaned over his shoulder. The camera showed the door, the bar, the tables, stairs, hallway to a VIP room that had a door that was a mirror until you looked at it at a certain angle and saw the seam. "Where does that go?" she asked. The man's eyes flicked to the hallway with the mirrored door. He swallowed. "Private lounge," he said. "Who has access?" she asked. "Manager," he said. "And some hosts. Private events." "Open it," she said. "I can't," he said. "I mean, I can buzz it, but you need a card." She took the keys from her pocket. Among them was a plain silver card with no markings. She had seen it in the portfolio when the owner had handed over everything. She put it in her palm and felt the weight of it. No weight, actually. The weight was in what it opened. On the way to the lounge, they passed the DJ booth. The DJ looked up as their group moved through the crowd. Colin reappeared at the edge of the dance floor, eyes hard, jaw set. He was speaking to a man with a shaved head she had clocked by the door earlier. The bouncer. He had followed them in, leaving his post to another. The shaved head turned, met her eyes across the dark. His look was not the same as the manager's. It carried something else. He looked like a man who had seen something he could not unsee and had learned to act like he hadn't. The mirror door was a slick panel in a wall of reflections. Up close, there was a small slot where the card fit. She slid the silver card through, and the mirror opened a few inches like it was breathing. The music dimmed. The hallway beyond was narrow, carpeted thick, walls upholstered like a luxury car. The air changed. It smelled less like spilled drinks and more like a waiting room in a private clinic. She felt the bouncer behind her before she heard him. "Don't go in there," he said. She turned. This close, he looked tired. His eyes were older than his face. He had rain on the shoulders of his jacket. In the light, his hands trembled slightly from cold or something else. "You don't want this," he said low. "This isn't what you think." "Move," she said. "I know why you're here," he said. "I know about the girl." She stopped. The owner made a sound like someone had stepped on his foot. "What do you know?" she asked. 2 years ago," he said. "Night like this. A girl came alone. Brown hair. Cut like..." He held his hand at his jawline. She smiled at everyone. She was too friendly. Colin walked her back here. Said she was meeting someone important. She didn't come out with the crowd. I asked. He said she left. The cameras didn't show her leaving. That's when I stopped asking. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she said. "I did," he said. "Cops came. They asked one question, and then another question, and then another that had nothing to do with finding her. They told me if I liked working in this town, I should keep my head down. They said maybe I didn't remember right. I tried to keep looking careful without showing I was looking. More girls came. Some left. Some, I quit for a week. They called me back. I needed the money. You think I'm proud?" He had the same tired anger she did, but his was turned inward. She stared at him for a long second. The lights moved over his face like water. Then she turned back to the door. "Get the lights in that hall," she said to the man in the headset, who had joined them and stood hugging his own elbows. He clicked a button on a small remote, and the lights in the private hall came up to a soft, steady glow. They went in. The lounge had low couches and a bar with bottles backlit in a way that made them look important. A single camera was in the corner, but it was pointed at the ceiling, crooked. You could move it with a stick. Someone had. There were lipstick-stained glasses on a table and the smell of smoke trying to hide under a citrus spray. At the back, another door. This one was not a mirror. It was painted the same color as the wall, the edges tight to the frame. "Keys," she said. The host handed her the bunch again. None fit. She ran the silver card along the frame. There was no slot. She looked at the hinge. The screws were on the inside. Not a good sign. She pressed her ear to the wood. Heard nothing but her own blood. She stepped back. The bouncer reached past her and knocked. "Open," he said. "It's me." A long pause. Then a bolt sliding. The door opened a crack, and a single hazel eye looked out. The eye widened when it saw the owner, and widened more when it saw her. The door tried to close. The bouncer put his shoulder in the gap, pushed. The person inside gave up quickly, stepped back. A man with a pale face and a thin mouth. He wore a suit that looked like money and shoes that looked like he had bought them to be seen. He smelled like expensive soap and nerves. "What is this?" he asked, voice cool, but his hands betrayed him. "Sit," the bouncer said. The man sat. The room they entered was small and too clean. A couch, a low table, a refrigerator that hummed behind a cabinet door, a closet, a closed panel in the wall that was flush to the paint line. On the table, a ledger. Paper, not digital. Numbers in careful hand, and names that have been shortened like nicknames you only use with people you plan to keep close. She picked up the book and flipped. Her mouth went dry. The sums were too neat to be the bars. There were dates and codes, and an initial by a few columns that was the same on every line. C, a symbol on the front. A small drawn shape like a lamp with a halo. She had seen that shape once, in the corner of a flyer for a private event that had come up in her sister's messages weeks before she vanished. "What's behind the panel?" she asked. "No idea," the pale man said. He swallowed audibly. She ran her hand along the panel. It was warm in one spot. She pressed there. It clicked and opened an inch. She pulled. The panel swung out to reveal a short corridor that went 5 steps down and then turned. The air from the gap was cool and dry, like a server room. She felt the hair on her arms rise. She thought of Lila, how her laugh would bounce around a space like this, how she would say it felt like a movie set, and then would reach out and touch something with both hands because she liked to feel real things. The bouncer took the step down first. She followed. The corridor turned and ended at an old door that was not new to the building. It had old hinges painted shut once, then cut, then painted again. It looked like it had been there when the city still made things out of steel and shouted to be heard over machines. She pushed. It opened on a room with white tile on the walls and a drain in the floor and the kind of table that made her think of dentists and of a garage. Her breath sounded loud in the small room. The fridge hum was louder down here, a patient tone. She crossed to a cabinet and opened it. Inside were phones. Stacks of them. Some old, some new. Wallets. Cards rubber-banded. A thin silver chain with a small shell charm. She reached out like her hand had a memory and picked up the chain. The shell was chipped on one edge the way it had been the day Lila had dropped it on a rough sidewalk when they were 14, and she had cried for a second and then shrugged and said maybe now, had a story. Maya had bought the chain for her at a street stall with coins they barely had. It had hung on Lila's collarbone in every photo that mattered. She closed her hand around the charm, and for a moment the room tilted. She steadied it. She put the chain in her pocket and stood very still. "Get the police," she said to the owner. His face was gray. He nodded and went back up. She looked at the bouncer. He was at the door, his jaw tight. "I didn't know about this," he said. "No," she said. "I don't think you did." "If I had," he said, "I would have burned this place to the ground." He didn't say her name or ask hers. He looked at the phones. They were stacked like a small city. Each one was a person, a night, a thing that had been taken and set in a drawer. She thought of how easy it is to keep a face while your hands do something else. The ledger lay open on the table upstairs, but the proof of what kind of place this really was sat right here, mute and exact. She took out her phone and called a number that was burned into her memory in the way that some numbers get burned into you, because you have repeated them through enough fear to make them permanent. "Eris," a voice said. "It's Maya," she said. "At Sepia. I need you to come now. Come quiet. Bring a woman from your unit. Bring a property crimes detective too, and someone who knows how to handle a server." "A beat." "You did it?" he asked. "I did something," she said. "We'll see what I did in the morning." They waited in the high room with the back hallway sealed and the mirrored door propped open. She told the DJ to cut the music early. He looked at the owner. The owner put a hand up. The music faded and the room filled with confused voices. The servers drifted like birds whose direction had changed, and they didn't know why. The crowd groaned. The lights came up 2 levels. She told the host to make an announcement about a system's fault and offered everyone a refund on their tables, plus a voucher for another night somewhere else. People took their coats. People complained. It didn't matter. The room grew less crowded by the minute. Some who had been there enough times knew that something had shifted, and they left quickly because they liked to be on the right side of change when it came. Colin tried to push to the back hallway. The bouncer stood in front of him and didn't move. The pale man in the small room was still sitting, fingers wrapped around his knee, eyes on the wall. The host had gone pale. She asked for a glass of water for the host and handed it to her. The host looked at her over the rim like she was trying to decide if this was how the world would be now. Detective Harris arrived in plain clothes, no lights, walking like he was just another guest leaving early. A woman with him had her hair in a knot and eyes that missed nothing. They went back with Maya and the bouncer. Harris's jaw clenched when he saw the chain in her hand. He knew enough to ask nothing and look at everything. The woman took photos slowly and calmly. They worked while the room upstairs emptied to a strange quiet. Harris didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He set his phone down and looked at Colin, who stood on the edge like a man waiting for a taxi that he was sure would come for him no matter how long it took. "I know you're 3 good lawyers," Harris said. "They'll be asleep. Let me save you the trouble of waking them. Don't run. Don't speak. Don't touch your face. And don't ever play cards again because you have no control." Colin laughed in a sharp burst that wanted to be a cough. "You have no idea what you're walking into," he said. "This is bigger than me. This is bigger than this room. You think she can buy this and clean it? You have no idea how many rooms there are in this city." "I know enough," Harris said. "I know what's in this room." Maya stood a half step back and watched and felt the chain cut a small line in her palm. She thought of the first call to Harris 2 years ago, the night after Lila didn't come home. He had been the only one who had looked at her like she wasn't crazy for feeling a truth she could not prove yet. He had been the only one who had said he would call when he had nothing to say because silence could feel like an answer you didn't deserve. She had waited through 100 silences. She had gone to work and made money and learned things about people who hide money and about people who spend it. She had watched the way money could make a door open that would never open without it. She had learned to move it through shell companies and to set a trap that looked like a gift. She had done all of that because she could not stand at another door and be told it wasn't for her. Not again, not when the door had her sister on the other side. They bagged the ledger. They photographed the panel and the corridor and the stack of phones and the small scuffs on the floor that told a story of chairs and shoes and someone who had stood in the corner and rubbed a foot against the same spot because the same thought had looped through them. Harris spoke to the owner in a tone that said the owner was going to have a busy year. The woman detective spoke to the host gently and let her cry out the apology that had been pressed behind her teeth for months. When the last of the crowd was gone and the club felt like a stage after the show, they sat in the office with the screens. The man with the headset had gone from frozen to helpful, as if helping could erase the fact that he hadn't wanted to see what his screen didn't show. He pulled footage from a month before Lila's last night. It showed Lila entering, smiling, tipping the host, waving at the bartender who smiled because she smiled at everyone, and when a smile like hers comes in a door, you think your night might be saved. It showed an angle of her laughing at the bar, and then it skipped. A jump, a tiny one. Blink, and you miss it. Harris didn't blink. "Go frame by frame around the cut," he said. They did. In one frame, she was turning to the bar. In the next, her elbow was at a slightly different angle, and the pour had advanced further than it should have. The camera had dropped frames, or someone had dropped them for it. "Where's the original file?" the woman asked. The man in the headset swallowed. "What you're looking at is the original," he said. "But we back up to a server in the building next door." "A closet." Maya stood. "Don't," the bouncer said. "Not tonight. Not now." She looked at him. "How many nights do you want me to wait?" she asked. He looked pained. "You did a lot," he said. "You did more than I thought anyone would do. Take the win. The rest is alive. It moves." He was right. It moved. It moved like a thing you try to kill with one blow that would curl back to a smaller shape and grow again when you were tired. She sat back down and pressed her thumb over the edge of the shell charm until it hurt enough to ground her. In the corner, the pale man in the small room had his head in his hands. Colin stared at the surface of the desk like it might show him a path he had missed. Harris gathered his notes and stood. "We'll need to keep the place closed for a bit," he said to the owner. "We'll seal that room. We'll need a warrant for the other building, and we'll get in the morning. Don't go home tonight if you have anything in your house you don't want the world to see, because someone's going to make calls." The owner nodded with the numbness of a man who had spent his life pretending not to know the truth about his own house. Maya walked back through the club. The smell had changed now that the room was empty. Less perfume, more mop water. Chairs upended onto tables. A line of lights above the bar reflected in the mirror like a runway. The world had a way of being both simple and impossible at the same time. The simple part tonight was that a door had opened and she had walked through it and found evidence. The impossible part was everything that would come next. At the front, near the door where the rain still went on, the bouncer stood, his hands in his jacket pockets. He looked at the dark street like it was telling him a secret. "What's your name?" she asked him. "Luis," he said. "I know yours." "Thank you for moving," she said. He shook his head. I did nothing, he said. I stood in the way for too long. You tried to warn me, she said. He half smiled. I try to scare you off, he said. Some nights, I worry more about the people who come alone than what these guys might do to me. But then you said 5 minutes, and I thought, either she's insane or she's serious. Both are useful, she said. A corner of his mouth lifted. You going to keep it? He asked, nodding at the space. For now, she said. Long enough to make sure no one can do this here again. After that, we'll see. I started working the door after my sister disappeared, he said, like he had decided to tell her, and then realized he didn't have practice saying it out loud. I thought I could catch something, or someone, that I could make it not happen to someone else. But the night you think you will save someone, you realize you are one man, and you are tired, and you get hungry, and you miss things. I know that kind of night, she said. Rain pounded a little harder. A car sent a wave against the curb, and the water slapped the tire of her car. She thought of every door in the city and how they all had rules, real and made up. She thought of every person who had chosen to open a door for someone else, and how the world turned on those choices, and how you might never know the name of the person who had held it for you. Back inside, she went to the back office, closed the door, and sat. The chain lay on the desk. She set the ledger beside it. She went through the names. Some were people she had read about in the business pages. Some were names that meant nothing and would turn out to be everything, because they were the names that the others used when they thought no one was listening. In a margin, next to a date that matched the night Lila had come in, there was a small mark shaped like a lamp with light rays drawn around it, and the letters AL. She traced the letters. Arclight, the name she had glimpsed once, a shadow name that moved in different places when she tried to follow it. She looked up at the small camera in the corner of the office and smiled without warmth. She knew someone might still be watching from somewhere else. She wanted them to know she was watching back. Her phone buzzed. A text from Harris. We got the warrant. Tomorrow morning. Sleep if you can. Sleep felt like a joke. She closed her eyes and leaned back. For a second, she let the noise of the rain become the sound of Lila laughing, the way her laugh climbed and then broke like a wave. She opened her eyes and picked up the chain and wrapped it around her fingers. It was not a miracle. It was a small piece of metal with a memory burned into it. It was enough. When morning came, it would be in through the high transom windows, and it would show the smudges people made when they pressed their hands against the door and asked to be let in. It would show dust the night had kept hidden. It would show the smear on the edge of the ledger where someone had touched the page with a sticky finger. It would show that everything that looked clean in the night has edges you can only see in daylight. It would show the names. It would show the phones. It would show that there had been a room behind the room. Outside, the rain softened. Trucks moved in the early light. Somewhere a bakery rolled up its metal gate and began to make the day. She stood, pocketed the chain, and walked to the mirrored door one more time. It reflected her in the hall and the empty lounge. It reflected a woman who had once been told at a dozen doors that she was not what the people on the other side wanted to see. The mirror didn't argue with her now. She put her palm against it and felt the cool glass. There was no magic in it. There was only her hand and the fact that she had decided that she would not ask this door anything ever again. She turned off the lights and went back through the club, past the bar where a single glass still sat, lipstick red and smudged into a heart by accident. At the front, she told Luis she would be back before dawn. He nodded like he had decided she would keep coming back and that the city might have to make room for that fact. When she stepped into the gray morning, the world felt like it had changed in some microscopic way. Nothing had moved, and everything had. She walked to her car without looking behind her. Somewhere on some server or in some other room, someone had a list with her name on it. Someone had watched her move and had made a note. She couldn't keep this door alone. She would need help. She would need to pull on threads that went into places where her money and her anger and her planning were only part of what would keep her safe. She had learned that you couldn't scare everyone into doing the right thing, but you could make it cost them more to do the wrong thing. As she pulled the car door open, she saw her reflection in the window, and for a heartbeat, it was Lila there, grinning like she had gotten away with something. The vision was not a ghost. It was a trick of light and a mind that had been awake too long. She got in, closed the door, and sat with her hands on the wheel. You'll be inside in 5 minutes, she said to the empty car, and the rain clicked against the glass like a clock counting down. Then she started the engine and drove into a day that had already started to learn her name.